Creative Babble.
Today's episode is part 17 of the Who's Afraid of LaDonna Humphrey series. If you're just joining us and you've never listened to Who's Afraid of LaDonna Humphrey, I'd recommend you go back to season 18. In fact, there's a playlist on Spotify that I'll link to the show notes. Start there. It's a wild ride. Obviously, we're on part 17, so it's pretty good. All right, let's get on with the show. There's breaking news in the case of LaDonna Humphrey versus Anthony Christopher. LaDonna Humphrey has been locked in a legal battle with her former employer, Anthony Christopher, since 2018. He fired her, accused her of harassment, and said that she destroyed evidence. A judge agreed and hit her with a $3.57 million judgment. Since then, LaDonna Humphrey has been fighting to appeal that decision. But now, the fight is over. Why? Because the right to appeal, her last shot at overturning this judgment, was sold. Not to just anyone, it was sold to the very same person that she's been battling in court all these years. And here's the kicker. A federal appeals court said that the sale is perfectly legal. Her right to keep fighting, gone. Now, if this all sounds confusing, you're not alone. Bankruptcy law isn't exactly made for podcasts, but I am going to walk you through it step by step and break down how we got here, what it means, and why this case could have much bigger implications than just one judgment. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend. Stories about real people pretending to be someone else. Today's episode has been almost 7 years in the making. On July 29th, a federal court delivered a ruling that changed everything. The court didn't side with LaDonna Humphrey. In fact, 3 judges unanimously ruled against her. And this wasn't just a decision out of a local courtroom. This came from the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the most powerful courts in this country. It sits just one level below the U.S. Supreme Court. That means that their ruling doesn't just apply to LaDonna. They shape how the law is interpreted across 7 states, including Arkansas, Missouri, and Iowa. So when the 8th Circuit says that it's legal for someone, even your opponent, to buy your right to appeal, that decision sets precedent. And unless the Supreme Court decides to step in, which is rare, this is final. In this case, it means LaDonna's legal fight is over. The court says that the sale of her appeal rights stands, and she can't undo it. But how did we get here? And how is that even legal to sell someone's last shot at justice? Let's unpack it. But first, let's recap how we got here. It's been over a year since we covered this part of the story, so even I had to refresh my memory. If you recall, Anthony Christopher owned a clinic called Absolute Pediatric Therapy, where LaDonna worked briefly before being fired in 2018. That firing kicked off a long, bitter legal battle between the two of them. On September 23, 2019, a judge issued a final ruling against LaDonna Humphrey, and the court found that she had sent fake anonymous emails, spoof messages, aimed at hurting Anthony Christopher and his clinic. The judge said that LaDonna knew the messages were false and sent them anyway, hoping to cause damage. And because of that, the court threw out her entire defense. Everything Anthony Christopher claimed in his lawsuit, the court treated as fact. All he had to do was prove how much harm was done. Witnesses testified, the numbers added up, and in the end, the judge ordered LaDonna Humphrey to pay $3.57 million. Here's Anthony Christopher.
half of the money that was awarded to me was compensatory.
In other words, the loss of business, the cost of hiring new staff after the business started spiraling, attorney costs, you get it.
And then the other half of all of the money that was awarded to me was in punitive damages. I think when Judge Duncan looked at everything that had happened and they realized, holy cow, there's over $1.7 million in compensatory damages, Judge Duncan looked right at LaDonna's attorney and said, and in addition, I'm going to award the exact equal amount in punitive damages against LaDonna.
And this is all self-inflicted too, right? Because you could have just won that $1.7 million, but she inflicted that other second half by her behavior in court and by how careless and also by lying, by being found in contempt of court. On October 2nd, 2019, the court found LaDonna Humphrey in contempt. Not once, but 5 separate times. The judge had previously ordered both parties not to destroy evidence or send anonymous messages. But LaDonna violated that order. The court said that she lied about her phone being stolen, deleted key evidence, sent spoof emails, and falsely claimed that her social media and Apple accounts had been hacked. For each of those 5 violations, the judge sentenced her to 10 days in jail.
LaDonna thought that she could sit on a stand, swear under oath, and continue to get away with her lies.
What happens next is pretty complicated. So I called up Mark Friedman, a reporter who's been covering this case with the Arkansas Business Magazine, to help us break it down.
This section of the case begins in bankruptcy court. And after she did get the $3.57 million judgment against her, she goes to bankruptcy court, and I would assume that she thought that judgment would be discharged in bankruptcy, and so she wouldn't owe it.
Slick move, right? Well, it didn't work.
Anthony Christopher in his clinic asked the trustee to buy LaDonna's appellate rights to that $3.5 million case, which is unusual. I've never seen it, and it's pretty rare.
And it's almost a little messed up, right?
Can someone actually buy your rights to appeal a court decision? Yep, especially if you're in bankruptcy. Let me explain how this works. Imagine this. You lose a major lawsuit, you're hit with a multi-million-dollar judgment, you want to appeal to fight it, but you don't have the money to keep it going, so you file for bankruptcy. Here's a twist. In bankruptcy court, your assets go up for grabs. And those assets don't just mean your car or your house. They also include lawsuits and, yes, even your right to appeal. And that's exactly what happened in this case. LaDonna Humphrey lost her court battle and owed millions. She filed for bankruptcy, and then her opponent, Anthony Christopher, the same guy who sued her, made an offer. He told the trustee, hey, I'll pay X amount to buy her legal claims and her appeals right. And he did. Think about that. Her enemy bought her rights to keep fighting him in court. Filing for bankruptcy is like putting your life on the table at a yard sale. Your car, your house, your credit, everything is up for grabs. But in some cases, even your right to keep fighting in court is considered an asset. And the person that you're fighting, well, they show up early and buy it cheap. Now they own your side of the argument, and they could throw it in the trash.
Like I said, I've never seen it, and I've been in Arkansas business now 25 years. I haven't seen anything like it. I'm sure it's happened. I've just never seen it personally.
It's rare, it's legal, and it's brutal. Believe it or not, there's legal precedent for this. In multiple bankruptcy cases, courts have allowed a person's right to appeal, even their ability to defend themselves, to be sold off like property. And in some cases, it's the opposing party who buys those rights. Why? Well, to shut down the appeal and lock in their win.
My name is Joshua Silverstein. I go by Josh. I'm a professor of law at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, William H. Bowen School of Law.
bankruptcy, is not like the sexiest topic on a true crime
It
show.
is not.
But we're going to do our best to make it sexy. I'm just not qualified to answer those questions. So I figured
Right.
I wanted to find somebody that is. With my very little understanding about bankruptcy law, it seems like this case is a little unique, but maybe not to you. I don't know. To me, it seems, I thought it was really strange that somebody that sued you could turn around and buy your appeals right and then squash it. I just didn't even know that was a thing. It just seems so
think
clever.
about it this way. Suppose you own a house and someone damages your house and you don't want to deal with that anymore. You could sell the house to me, and not only will I get the house, but I would get the right to sue the people who damaged the house as well.
Wow. That's so interesting. When you put it that way, it doesn't seem so strange. I think
Right.
what's unique about this case is that it was the person that sued her that invested in her appeals rights. Now, how unusual is that?
I don't know if in that precise form how unusual it is. I've never seen anything like that happen, but it's very, very similar to settling a case.
So you're just saying it's just a different type of settlement, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what's effectively a different type of settlement. Now, sometimes property has to be put up for a public auction. And so what could happen is I declare bankruptcy. I've got a right to sue you. The trustee is going to sell that claim at a public auction. You might bid the most for it and buy the claim, and then it'd be gone because it's just against you. But it'd be just a different way of purchasing a settlement.
It's rare, but the courts have upheld it as long as the price is right and no one objects in time. In LaDonna Humphrey's case, that's exactly what happened.
So the trustee and Anthony and the clinic and his attorneys worked to get this agreement to buy her rights from her, because those rights at that time, I think, included the counterclaim against Anthony. So there's still some value there. And so that's why they were worth something.
Yeah, but how does owning someone else's appeal be worth something? Some litigation funders, think of them like Wall Street investors for lawsuits, see appeals as a speculative asset. If they think that the appeal has a good chance of winning, they'll buy the rights cheap and pay for the legal fight, win the appeal, and then collect a chunk of the overturned judgment or award money. It's like flipping a house, but instead you're flipping a court case. In other words, if the original owner can't afford to keep fighting, someone else might buy the rights and step in their shoes. It's a low-risk, high-reward investment. So you might be asking yourself, how much is LaDonna Humphrey's appeals worth?
He offered $12,500 to buy those. And the trustee thought, well, it's difficult to win an appeal at state court anyway. It's like an 80% success rate. So the trustee agreed with it.
And here is where LaDonna messed up. She never asked for a stay of the sale in bankruptcy court. Anthony Christopher paid just $12,500 to buy LaDonna's rights to appeal the $3.5 million judgment, along with any claims that she made against him.
They held a hearing in bankruptcy court, and the bankruptcy court approved it.
LaDonna did object the sale of her appeals right in bankruptcy court, but here's the thing. She never filed a motion to stop it. In legal terms, that's called a stay. Without it, the sale went through. Later, she did try to fight back. She appealed the decision, arguing that the sale wasn't fair, and this time, she actually won. A U.S. district judge sided with her, saying that the sale wasn't reasonable. Why? Because by losing her right to appeal, she lost her only real chance to challenge the $3.5 million judgment. But that win for LaDonna Humphrey didn't last very long. Anthony Christopher appealed that ruling, and that case went up to the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. When the case reached the Eighth Circuit, the court ruled that because the sale had already gone through and there was no stay in place, her appeal was moot. In other words, even if the sale was flawed, it was too late to undo it. That omission turned out to be fatal.
Well, since she didn't do that, the Court of Appeal justices or the Eighth Circuit said, well, yes, she needed that. So we're going to rule in Anthony's favor and then not even worry about these other issues. So that means even if she got her bankruptcy discharge, she'd still owe this money. So he's got that, and then now he owns the rights to the appeal, and he can have that dismissed.
Anthony Christopher's $12,500 purchase of LaDonna Humphrey's appellate rights is now locked in, valid, final. In other words, he officially owns what was once her right to appeal that $3.57 million judgment. And his legal team most likely will shut it down for good. Now that the appeal's out of the way, the next step is to start collecting. Yep, it's time to go after the $3.5 million judgment.
You know, one of the things that I bet is going to shock the listeners is that when you file for bankruptcy, that your assets, obviously your assets, if you own a car or a house, those are up for grabs. But I think what they're going to find shocking is that so are lawsuits or maybe even your right to appeal. That just seems insane.
Like I said, I had never seen that somebody buying their right to appeal.
There was nobody offering to buy her appellate rights or any of that.
Yeah,
the only buyer was Anthony Christopher.
Right.
So essentially and this is like what the listeners need to understand is that where LaDonna went wrong was that she did not stop the sale.
She thought since she had the appellate court case appeal stage, she thought that covered the sale of the rights to it, but that the judges at the Eighth Circuit said no, that's not the case.
And chances are Anthony Christopher's never going to see this money, right?
I would probably say you're correct. I don't know if LaDonna has $3.6 million hanging around, probably not, but
yeah,
I guess I know I don't.
Yeah.
So,
but from here on out, I guess he could garnish her wages, maybe.
Yes.
Any property she owns.
Yeah, I think some property would be protected, but I think he could get like a garnishment, and I suspect they're going to ask for her bank accounts and financial records and things like that to see what they could seize to pay off this judgment.
The first place they're going to look is her salary at Oasis of Northwest Arkansas, the sober living facility that she's been running since 2019. But that's not going to get them very far because according to the latest 2022 filing with the IRS, LaDonna only earned $15,600 a year. That's right at the federal poverty line. As previously reported on this podcast, LaDonna Humphrey is an aggressive fundraiser. Many of the women who stayed at Oasis, including some of her house managers, claim that LaDonna Humphrey pockets most of the money she raises for the halfway house. As one of my listeners put it on Instagram about this ruling, $3.5 million is a hell of a lot of Easter egg hunts. So, what does LaDonna Humphrey have to say about all this? I reached out to her and her attorney, Tom Stocklin, over email asking for a statement. So far, crickets. I haven't heard back. She did, however, put a statement out, not through any official channel, but in the Sham blog today in Fort Smith, under the byline of her usual mouthpiece, Dennis McCaslin. But here's the thing. Dennis McCaslin usually writes like Fred Flintstone with a hangover, and this one had perfect grammar, polished sentences, not a single all-caps rant. So yeah, we all know who really wrote this. They wrote, quote, "He sues, he spins, he slanders, and when that doesn't work, he starts over, louder and more aggressive than before. He sued her for slander, kicking off a legal campaign that spanned years and devastated her life in ways that most people can't imagine. During that lawsuit, her phone containing messages, documentation she believed would prove her innocence, was stolen. Anthony Christopher claims that she faked the theft. The judge sided with him, struck her legal response and counterclaim, and held her in contempt of court. That woman, LaDonna Humphrey, fought back anyways. She fought through state court, bankruptcy court, and eventually all the way into federal court. She did it with attorneys. She did it pro se when no one else would stand by her. She did it even when it meant reliving trauma, facing harassment, and watching her name dragged through the mud. But this week, a crushing blow landed. A federal court issued a ruling that, in the coldest of legal terms, said that she had no standing, no right to keep fighting, no more legal options. Just like that, boom, it's over. No hearing, no jury, no presentation of evidence, just a gavel drop that echoes with finality. And while Anthony Christopher will undoubtedly celebrate this as a victory, it's anything but. It's a tragic example of how the legal system can be manipulated to silence victims and shield predators. He didn't win on the facts. He won on a technicality, and he knows it. Unquote. LaDonna, through Dennis McCaslin, then goes on the offensive, using the blog post to take aim at Anthony Christopher. She dishes out every bit of dirt she can dig up on him, throwing accusations left and right. It reads less like a legal response and more like a hit piece. LaDonna may not want to go on the record, but she's definitely trying to control the narrative.
Javier, as we see, the woman's the first to point out anybody's flaws, but the last to accept her own behavior and character assassination. LaDonna didn't lose because I outspent her. LaDonna lost because she's guilty, and what she did was wrong, and what she did was hurt people. In the state of Arkansas, if you've been found guilty of malicious harm, injury, or intent, those things are non-dischargeable off of a bankruptcy. Well, if you look at that judgment from Judge Duncan, that language is all over the order, which tells me Judge Duncan also knew LaDonna was going to attempt to file bankruptcy. Look, the big question everybody asks is, right, you won $3.57 million, now it's yours, but does she have the money? The answer is no. She doesn't have the money. But when I sued LaDonna, I knew that you could never get blood out of a turnip. That woman will never buy another house. That woman will never get approved for any major financing for the rest of her life because she's going to have $3.57 million in interest weighing over her everywhere she goes.
And, at the end of the day, I want to say that, ultimately you won this case, right? But at the same time, I feel like there's no winners, and I don't want to speak for you. This has had a real big cost on you, right? You're not going to see that money. You've been through hell for the last several years. Do you feel like vindicated, or how are you feeling right now?
I think you're right, Javier. There's no real winner in any of this. If I could go back, I would go back to the beginning, and I would have never hired LaDonna. I would have never met LaDonna. And so, unfortunately, I can't go back. But you're right. The thing is that this has done a lot of damage. It's inflicted a lot of pain. There's been a lot of stress. I've spent a whole lot of money that I'd rather spend elsewhere, defending my name and holding LaDonna accountable. But in the weird way, Javier, it's over, but is it ever really over with LaDonna? And the answer is no.
And Anthony Christopher's right. LaDonna hasn't stopped. Even with a $3.5 million judgment hanging over her, she's still harassing victims and witnesses tied to violent crimes. Since I wrapped the Who's Afraid of LaDonna Humphrey series, she's moved on, inserting herself into new cases, playing the same game. And the whole time, I've been watching, documenting, waiting. Now, it's time to bring it all into the light. Next time on Pretend, LaDonna targets a 911 caller who witnessed a murder across her property.
Did LaDonna reveal you?
Well, she put in for a FOIA, and then, yes, she did an article saying, what responsibility does the 911 caller hold? Like, could she have done more? Should she have done more? Is she responsible? But she never wrote it herself. She gave the most details. She said, in the same yard as. I mean, there's only one neighbor.
Yeah.
LaDonna and her surrogates exposed the identity of a 911 caller. And now that caller fears for her life because the men that she believes committed the murder are still out there.
They will kill a dog and they will kill her how they killed her. I'm not letting my kids out of my sight. I have pictures of one of the guys that was involved standing on our property line, holding a gun by his side, smoking a cigarette, staring at me. I'm scared. They know me. They lived by me for a long time, and they know I'm mouthy, and if they drove too fast with the dogs, or I did not care to tell them.
That's next time on Pretend. This episode was written and produced by me, Javier Leiva. It was edited by the talented Puneeth Shenoy with the Podcast Pundits. And our theme music is by thechicken.net. We'll be back with a brand new episode next week. Of course, you could always get the latest episode on Patreon or Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts. And it's more than just brand new episodes. On Patreon, we really do have a community. Sometimes we listen to the episodes live together. That's a lot of fun. So if you like this show, consider supporting it on Patreon or Apple Podcasts on Pretend Plus. Thank you so much. And remember, don't forget to leave a review and follow us on social at Pretend Pod. All right, talk to you next week. All right, so that was part 17 of Who's Afraid of LaDonna Humphrey. It was a very complicated episode, and if you actually want to hear more and learn more about bankruptcy and if any of this is ethical, check out Patreon and Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts, because I have an interview with that law professor to break it all down for you. And part 18 of Who's Afraid of LaDonna Humphrey is out on Patreon and Apple Podcasts on Pretend Plus. If you've been wondering what LaDonna has been up to all these months, this episode will catch you up. She is now targeting a 911 caller who witnessed a crime. It is unbelievable. And that episode is available right now. So go check it out.
Creative Babble.